And welcome to CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. The Biden administration reveals a vaccination plan of action for children ages 5 to 11. We'll break down the proposal. Plus, China looking to expand its control over the digital world, not only in its own country, but globally.
If you go back into Chinese history, back around, 2,500 years ago to almost the present, there have been many regimes in China that have tried to control everybody.
See what obstacles the Chinese could face. And if you want to know how to have fun, check in with children.
We should ask kids what sounds fun to them in hopes that we will teach them, man, the way God made you is great.
Our Studio 5 conversation with author Annie F. Downs as she helps children find joy with her new book, What Sounds Fun to You? Those stories and more are ahead today.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour in Washington, D.C., where the White House plans to roll out COVID vaccinations to children ages 5 to 11. The Biden administration has secured enough supply for 28 million children, and the doses would be sent to 25,000 pediatric offices, community centers, and health clinics. There are also plans to set up vaccine sites in 100 children's hospitals. Federal emergency management funding will also help to make the vaccine available at some schools and other community-based sites. The Food and Drug Administration is expected to approve the mixing and matching of COVID-19 booster shots while still recommending using the same brand for a booster. Mark Martin has an update on the approval that could come this week.
The FDA's expected authorization of mixing and matching COVID-19 booster shots is likely to come along with the approval of boosters for the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson shots. Authorities approved a booster for the Pfizer vaccine for many Americans last month. Still, a U.S. health official says the agency is expected to recommend using the same brand of a booster.
We now know that J&J wanes more quickly than the mRNA vaccines, and being able to give more options to patients is important.
There is some evidence that a booster with an mRNA vaccine will provide more benefits for people who received the one-shot Johnson & Johnson. A limited study found that an additional dose of the same Johnson & Johnson vaccine boosted antibodies by 4 times. Boosting the J&J shot with Pfizer caused antibodies to jump 35 times, and a Moderna booster increased antibodies 76 times. Still, some who received the J&J vaccine want to keep the same booster brand.
I'd rather stay with one course and just keep it that way.
Vaccinations are lowering the number of COVID cases nationwide. A CDC analysis released Tuesday showed the Pfizer vaccine is 93% effective at preventing hospitalizations of 12 to 18-year-olds. But cases and hospital admissions are on the rise in 10 states that experience colder climates as more people gravitate indoors.
I really do not want to see another horrific fall-winter wave like we saw last year, and I think it's possible.
Meanwhile, experts want more intense research of new COVID variants. At least 6% of cases in the United Kingdom are what's known as AY4.2, a descendant of Delta. COVID deaths spiked at their highest level since March in the UK. U.S. researchers are also tracking that subvariant.
From the data that I've seen, cases of the AY4.2 have been seen in about 5 states, maybe about 7 cases total.
Scientists seeking to learn if it's more easily spread.
We need to remain vigilant, whether this variant will turn out to be a problem or not. Until this is controlled everywhere in the world, we all remain at risk.
Going forward, a CDC advisory panel will debate and vote on the mixing of vaccine booster shots on Thursday, with the CDC director making her final recommendations shortly after that. Mark Martin, CBN News.
A transgender student is accused of sexual assaults at 2 schools in Loudoun County. Parents are up in arms and calling for the superintendent and several school board members to resign. Tara Mergener is following this story.
After months of turmoil over COVID restrictions, critical race theory, and transgender policies, there are now reports of 2 sexual assaults by a gender-fluid boy. The county's new bathroom policy and a recent change to state law are back in the spotlight. Superintendent Scott Ziegler apologizing after 2 girls reported the sexual assaults on school grounds.
I'm sorry that we failed to provide the safe, welcoming, and affirming environment that we aspire to provide.
According to the Commonwealth's attorney, the same teenager is accused in both incidents that happened months apart at different Loudoun County high schools. In one, the attack took place in a girls' restroom. The alleged attacker allowed access by the school's transgender policy. Scott Smith, father of that victim, is suing the school system after being arrested while trying to confront the board at a recent meeting.
The whole thing was handled poorly.
The superintendent and the school board members insist they were not aware of the specific details of this incident until it was reported in media outlets.
Mr. Ziegler, how could have you lied to all of these parents about what had happened to my daughter?
This all brings renewed criticism on 2 controversial measures. The county's recently adopted rule allowing transgender students to use restrooms that match their gender identity, a policy supported by Virginia's Board of Education, and HB 257, a bill passed in the legislature by the Democrat majority that ended mandatory school reporting of certain crimes, including sexual battery.
So that parents aren't aware, so that law enforcement isn't aware. And I think that had a direct impact on how they handled both of these rapes.
Amid the latest fallout, one school board member abruptly resigned, and there are new calls for the superintendent to step down.
His false statement on June 22nd and his failure to keep an alleged assailant out of school are far worse and merit immediate termination.
Tara Mergener, CBN News.
And here's some other stories we're following for you right now in the CBN newsroom. Police have arrested 125 people in a human trafficking sting in Florida called Operation Roundup. A pastor, Samuel Phillips, is among those in custody. Phillips launched Be Limitless Church in January. A high school teacher, Joe Velasco, is also in custody. Detectives targeted the suspects for soliciting sexual favors from minors for themselves or exploiting them to others. Everyone aboard a private plane in Florida survived a collision. That's 21 passengers who managed to escape after the plane crashed and burst into flames. Eyewitnesses report seeing a puff of smoke coming from the engine just before taking off. Survivors tell the Houston Chronicle when the plane stopped, they screamed, "Get out," and the crew helped them to exit. They were headed to Boston for the Major League Baseball playoffs. The cause of the crash is not yet known. Coming up, we're going to take a closer look at China's ambition for control through digital media beyond its borders and the global threat that could pose. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. We'll be right back, right after this. China's communist leaders are convinced they can not only control the country in the online world, but they can dominate the digital world globally. Our Mark Martin spoke with Dr. Ted Baer about the growing concerns over China's plans.
But China has a different world than we have. In fact, if you go back into Chinese history, back around, 2,500 years ago to almost the present, there have been many regimes in China that have tried to control everybody, and this just gives them better control of everybody. I don't think it's going to work, but I don't have a crystal ball. I'm a Christian. I don't believe in crystal balls, but I do not think this is going to work for long because the amount of data that they're going to be collecting is just atrocious. I don't know if people, because every country, there are people that want to be free, whether it's Muslim Uyghurs in China or whether the Christians, there are a tremendous number of Christians in China, almost as many as in the United States, are under extreme pressure. And I know several of them, not many of them, but several of them who've taken my class in How to Succeed. There are people who have taken my class in Singapore. So there's just a tremendous number of people who want freedom. And I've got to point out one thing. There's a movie a couple of years ago, won the Berlin Film Festival and several other film festivals, called The Lives of Others. It's about the Stasi, which was the communist police in East Germany, and it was the best at gathering data. And it's about a man who's posted across from the theater industry, the apartment building where the best director and the actresses live. And his whole life is listening into them. He's living the lives of others. Stasi collected so much information that the government collapsed. They had aircraft hangars full all over East Germany, full of files and files and files on people. And at some point, you lose track of it. So whether the artificial intelligence is going to help it to become manageable, I doubt it. I think even with all the best, but maybe we've moved to the point that actually artificial intelligence can get them to realize an age-old Chinese dream and communist dream of completely controlling everybody, which would be very sad. And this doesn't start with China or communism. It starts with Sparta, where they did the same thing. So this has been man's foible for a long time when you make government God instead of God God.
Dr. Baer, what evidence are you seeing of this?
Well, you see evidence all over the world. I mean, they're trying to do this in Venezuela and Cuba. You also hear friends of ours that are Chinese who studied with my son at Chinese University, which is considered the Harvard of China, that have moved to Australia and to New Zealand and elsewhere. And they've got family trapped in there. You can't do anything. You're completely paralyzed from saying or doing anything because you're going to get bad social credits. It's a very oppressive situation. And it's sad because, Xi himself, the Prime Minister of China, at one point was considered to be the most free market, but he was just in disguise. And we can give you a long history of communism, that many of the worst and most brutal leaders, like Stalin, were in disguise. Nobody understood that Stalin was playing the end game. And when he took over, he destroyed everything. And he lied about Lenin appointing him and all that. So this has been going on again for a long time. And the evidence is in people's lives that are being destroyed. And probably the next group of people whose lives are going to be destroyed is Taiwan. And I love Taiwan. And I've been there several times. So all of this is very problematic.
Should America and the free world be concerned about this influence that China has with apps and digital technology, and even China's dominance with microchips for computers and phones?
We should be. And the problem is that, and I know, I came to Christ late in life, my late 20s. And I had been a card-carrying member of a communist organization because I thought that was the solution so Jesus saved me from that sort of worldview. But there have been so many people who've educated in that worldview that if you go into any event, if you go to next door in California about, I call him Governor Gruesome or whatever else, you hear people who want to have the government control every part of their lives. And of course, the consequences is the homelessness and all the problems we have today.
What should America and other nations be doing to change this when it comes to digital spying and even with the technology production dominance?
Well, one, we should stop focusing on redesigning our population's sexual preferences and everything, and start focusing on science, start focusing on mathematics, as we say in the article. As I said, I worked for NASA for a year as a research engineer, and we used slide rules, and we got a rocket to the moon. Somebody has to start thinking about getting back to the basics and stop doing social justice and critical race theory and all the garbage today. But that's from somebody who used to be the head of a department at Berkeley and City University, New York. I just think we've completely sold out our past, and therefore we've sold out our future, as de Tocqueville said.
All right, Dr. Ted Baer, thanks for your insight, sir.
Still ahead, a great question for you and your children. What sounds fun to you? All part of a new project for kids that could bring you hours of joy. Stay with us. When it comes to a good time, no one knows how to have fun like children do, but these days, even they can use some fresh ideas for finding fun in their lives. That's where author Annie F. Downs comes in, helping children to find joy with her new book, What Sounds Fun to You? This week, Studio 5 is sitting down with the author to talk about the project. I had no clue you were a teacher?
Yes, can you believe it? People left me in charge of their children's lives. Yes. 100% true. I got to teach elementary school for 5 years. I did 2 years of 5th grade and 3 years of 4th grade. So I always stayed in that like higher elementary world, but I loved it.
So it's only natural that you would write a children's book then.
Yes.
Tell me what gave birth to this book.
Well, you know, Ephraim, what happens a lot when I ask adults, I mean, you and I had this conversation when That Sounds Fun came out a few months ago. When I talk to adults and I say, tell me what sounds fun to you, they always start with, in fact, you did it. I've never forgotten your answer. They always start with, oh, I don't know if anybody else is going to think this is fun, or I don't know about this. You may not like this. And there's this like tiny bit of shame attached to our grown-up fun. And it's because when we were kids on the playground, there was like one thing that was cool and everything else wasn't cool. And so we started learning, well, whatever I think is fun needs to go in the back seat compared to what everyone else says is cool. And so then when we started thinking about, I mean, I ask everybody, because the show is called That Sounds Fun when I have them on the podcast, what sounds fun to you? I thought we should ask kids what sounds fun to them in hopes that we will teach them, man, the way God made you is great. The way you are is just fine. You don't need to like what everybody else likes. Just like what you like. And so that's kind of our hope with this book, is that kids will see themselves in it and see this opportunity they have to really appreciate the way they were uniquely made.
Now, you said to ask kids. Have you heard from kids what sounds fun?
Oh my gosh, you're going to love this. Okay, so most of the kids in the book are kids I actually know. The illustrator, Jenny Poe, is incredible, and I sent her pictures of all these kids that are in my real life, and she illustrated them into the book. So on the cover is me in the center, and then my friend Kiki with her little hair buns, and then my friend Sam on the other side of me. I mean, those are real kids. So the fun thing was, Ephraim, they didn't know. I had gotten permission from their parents, but the kids didn't know. And so I brought them all into our podcast studio, and I sat them down, and I said, does that person look familiar to you? And their eyes would light up, and I'd say, I think that's you. And they would say, I love playing soccer. I'm playing soccer in this book. I love playing soccer. And so that's one of the great things about what Jenny did as the illustrator, and what we did when we created this book together, is I wanted every kid to see a kid who kind of looks like them, whether it's an ability level or a hair color or a skin color or a thing they love to do. So we have kids of all different skin tones. We have kids with hearing aids and wheelchairs, glasses, and we've got kids playing outside. We've got kids reading books. We've got kids in the garden climbing a tree. We just wanted kids to find themselves everywhere and go like, because here's what's true about you and me too, when we read fiction, is that if we can see ourselves in the story, we believe the lesson of the story. And so I wanted every kid that picks this book up to see themselves somewhere so that they believe the book.
I love it. What lessons do you think we adults can pull from a book like this, and kids, period?
I mean, isn't it the truth that when we read picture books to kids, suddenly we're the ones? I mean, it's why people can't get through Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when they're reading it to their kids, because of what the story means to us when we see Aslan save the day, right? And so for me, I think my hope is that as grown-ups are reading this with kids, whether it's in their churches or in their classrooms or in their homes or with the kids in the neighborhood, is that the parents are also going, I miss doing that. I miss, there's a page with a grandmother and a granddaughter, and the grandmother looks so much like my grandmother. And I don't even know that Jenny meant to do that as the illustrator, but so even on that page, I have this moment of pause and go, man, I miss my grandmother. What a beautiful memory. How can I be that kind of voice in some other people's lives, even though I'm not a parent or a grandparent yet? And so I just go, man, are there going to be people who like have a really good memory of the instrument they used to play, or the thing or even there's a page that it's probably my favorite illustrated page of looking up at the stars. I'm like, man, what if everybody just finished the book and looked outside and saw what was up there and what God had made. And so that's my hope. But man, we have so much to learn from kids, don't we? They just, if they love you, they run towards you, right? If they love you, they run towards you. And so it's just things like that I go, man, if I love someone, I should just run towards them.
And this week, Studio 5 has a complete eye to children. We are going behind the scenes of a new animated series from rapper Ludacris. And we have a look at the film Clifford, the Big Red Dog, which now has a release date. You can catch the all-new Studio 5 this evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can find that on the CBN News Channel or on the CBN News app. Coming up, a firefighter rescues a kitten, and there's an even better happy ending for both. We've got the story for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. It took 2.5 months, but there's a happy ending for a little kitten rescued by a firefighter in Michigan. People magazine reports that Brandon Mulvaney, a Saginaw, Michigan firefighter, and his family have adopted the kitten he rescued back in August. He told reporters he knew almost immediately he'd adopt the cat, and it took him more than 2 months to make it official. Mulvaney and his first responders had a call that a kitten was trapped in a storm drain. He then crawled through a pipe more than 10 feet to find the kitten, and when he called out for the cat, it actually peeped out of a smaller pipe. That's when he grabbed the little fella and carried him out. He says he knew at that moment that he wanted to adopt the kitten because he came right to him. He and his family have named the kitten Huntley after one of the streets near the intersection where he was rescued. Time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is dream. Know this, it is never too late for God to move on that dream you may have long forgotten. If you're not dead, He's not done. And it's never too late for you to begin a new chapter in life, or even begin writing an entire new book. With that word, I encourage you to make today a wonderful Wednesday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com, and you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, I encourage you to make it a wonderful Wednesday and join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.